Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to my backyard garden again. I decided to make this episode based on the current Kung Flu pandemic that we're facing in this country, and just consider the fact that I feel a little at ease knowing that I have some of my own food growing out in the back. Now, I have to say this has been a long time in the making. This is not something you're going to be able to just go out and get started, despite the fact that Home Depot and Lowe's are still open. Maybe the nurseries are, I don't know. I am trying to be productive without going out too much. But I've had this garden this will be 6 years in May that I've had this backyard garden, and I feel better than ever about the opportunity that I have to grow my own food and to eat the things that come out of it myself. So, yeah, it's interesting that with the run-on supplies, we've had people go so crazy about certain items. And I don't grow enough here to feed myself and sustain myself, but it is nice to be able to have some of your own produce, fresh produce, so that when I want and need produce, I don't have to go to the store. That being said, I've also been very lucky in the last 2 weeks. I haven't had to water this at all. The only watering I've done is I've got a bunch of containers here that I've been using to collect runoff off the roof as it's rained, and I've used that to augment the trees because my trees are all breaking bud right now, and most of them are fruit trees. So I want to make sure that as they break bud and start to grow that they're getting enough water, because the amount of water that falls out of the sky in Vegas is not very reliable. I've been very lucky also. I have a lot of what I call free-range and cage-free vegetables. When I walk around the garden here in a moment, you'll see all the lettuce I have growing in the rocks and the carrots I have growing in the rocks. And then you'll see the dead remnants of last year's tomato brambles, because I don't believe in caging my tomatoes to control them. That's for the gardener's benefit for the harvest. But in letting the tomato plants go where they wanted to, they were able to grow fruit in random places, and I picked the ones that were hanging from the tree already because the vines are dead. And also I used it to cover other plants that were in their infancy so that the tomato plants would give them shade and cover. Because I do have these covers, which I think I've discussed in the previous episode, but they're not enough, or they're not at the right angle during all the parts of the day to cover things. So let's look and see what letting things go to seed and growing things from seed has gotten me in the garden so far this year. What does that say? So unfortunately, some things are going to go to seed. This is an incredibly tall broccoli plant. We've got our asparagus and our free-range carrots here. But in the garden we also have, there's some flowers, there's some cabbage over there, and some cauliflower and carrots galore. I've also got some strawberry plants in there, some peppers, cucumbers, etc. There's still some beets, and then the tomato plants back there, tomatoes and peppers. Here's my beets, and here's my free-range lettuce that's everywhere. This is from one plant that I let seed 2 years ago, and I've already harvested I think 6 heads of lettuce, including the one right here that's been cut off. But I've got quite a few plants in here that have seeded themselves, and I'm just going to let them grow, because these fruit trees here provide shade, and this tree, which finally grew, gives some shade in the afternoon, so I may be able to keep most of this alive in the summertime. But I've got herbs and flowers. These are my, oh look, they broke bud. The flowers on my lemon tree. So this is why I water them twice a week, even in the winter when they're dormant, because I want to have lemons. This one has not broken bud yet. This grapevine might be dead, but I have some mint back in there still, some more flowering brassica. This grapevine broke bud, I noticed today, so that's good. And then I've got my other brassicas back in there. For some reason that cabbage never made a head, it's making a flower. My berries. So I've got quite a few things in the works, including some peas. I noticed that these particular peas, somebody's coming in my yard and eating them, so I haven't gotten any peas off of it. And this was a peppercini plant, which also whatever was coming into my yard found delicious. You know, just hazards of the trade. But you know, I got my fruit trees leafing out, and these actually have fruit already, so watering them even with the rain. So there's quite a bit in here, as you can see, so that if this epidemic and pandemic goes on, I will be able to feed myself to some degree, at least with some of the more necessary foods and not just canned goods and frozen meat. There were some flowers on this apricot tree, but I think it looks like they are all gone. So this is my dead peach tree. The only fruit tree in the yard that didn't make it. Oh, this one even has, this lemon tree has some blooms. Not quite as many, but this one had lemons on it last year. So, I don't advertise, well, I'm on YouTube, so I guess I am advertising, but I don't advertise that I have a garden. And I don't advertise my address because I know that if this becomes a chaotic event, that this will draw people to me. And I don't want it to be overrun. It's not enough to help everyone, but it can help some people. And there are quite a few people in this area with fruit trees that they don't harvest. I'm going to go talk to them in the next couple of weeks, if I can, about capturing and preserving the fruits that they grow. There's peaches, pears, figs. There's a guy with an apple tree, a couple of apricot trees, more pomegranates, but those are a fall fruit anyway. But in terms of capturing these and starting to find someone who can can them so that we can preserve them, because a lot of these fruits on these trees in this neighborhood actually just go to waste because the people who grow them don't actually eat them. And I'm a little guilty of that myself. So, but it's been interesting that in this time of turmoil, I already had this because it gives me a little bit of peace of mind about my prospects and opportunities. The one sad thing about all this is that shade tree over there that I grew for shade. I planted so that my dog would have shade, and it finally gives shade a year too late to be a benefit to him. I feel bad about that. Weird noise. Anyway, that's that for now, and we'll see you soon.